Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Chapter Knowledge series. Thank you all for joining us today. Today we have a very special guest, Greg Smith. Okay, moderately. Greg Smith is a former CAI president and chair of CAI's Managers Council and works at Associa as I'm going to get your title wrong, Greg, Learning and Development Vice President. You're on mute.
That's okay. Director of Leadership Development.
Director of
It's
Leadership
a relatively
Development.
new title. So
Okay, very good. So we asked Greg, I participated or listened to a session that Greg did for a local chapter in Northern California and thought this would be a great session for executive directors and staff, tips and tricks for effective time management. And so we're hopeful that this will be beneficial to all of you joining today. And we are recording it for those people that are unable to attend today. And we've left a little time at the end so people can talk about project management and different tools you use or different systems you use to effectively manage either your staff or your volunteers or even yourself, if you'd like to share that information at the end. So I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Greg, to share your expertise in this area.
Thanks, Crystal. Hey, everybody. It's good to see you, some of you. Hey, Tony, how you doing? It's been a long time. I don't know about you all, but I really struggled with not having conference in 2020. You know, it's my way to connect with you all and other members, and it was difficult to say the least. So I hope I'll be seeing you all, or many of you, in August this year. What we're going to talk about today for the next 35 or so minutes, these things, we're going to talk about basically why you need to make sure you have an effective task management system, how to set priorities, how to get organized, and how to manage those things that are keeping you from doing this already. Because I can guarantee you, I'm not the first person that's ever said to you, or this is not the first time you've thought to yourself, I should have an effective task management system, right? This is not new information, but there are things that are keeping us from doing it. So I want to address those too. I don't know if this seems like your world from time to time, right? Everything's on fire, but you know what? We're going to put on a happy face. I thought it was interesting. Thanks to 2020, we now have things like the dumpster fire vinyl toy that you can buy and add to your desk, right? So you can get this on Amazon. Actually, go to it's 100soft.shop is the name of the artist. So give this artist some love, but you can find things like this. We never would have thought of something like this that would come out of the things that we've been going through as organizations, as families over the last year. Let's talk first about inefficiency and what it might look like if you are inefficient, if you don't have an effective task management system. Please, throughout this presentation, feel free to use the chat. For some reason, I can't get chat to float on top of my windows here. But please chat at me throughout. I will ask you specifically to answer some questions. I actually have a poll in here for you too later, but let's talk about inefficiency. So your first sign of inefficiency is you're missing stuff. Oh, I forgot to. I missed a task. I missed an appointment. I missed a phone call. That's the first and clearest indicator that your task management system is ineffective. Obviously, this is important because this diminishes your credibility in the eyes of your board, in the eyes of your members, okay? Creates a lack of trust. If you have employees that you deal with and you miss a one-on-one meeting, for example, you're gonna have trust issues. It's gonna make it harder for you to be effective and accomplish the things you need to accomplish. Every once in a while, I'll run into somebody that says, oh, I'm always late to everything. Like, it's a badge of honor, right? So we need to make sure that we are reliable people, reliable leaders. We're all leaders, whether or not you think you are. You're leading members, you're leading a board, and you're leading staff. So that's our first sign, is we're just missing stuff. We're missing tasks, we're missing appointment. The other sign of a potentially ineffective task management system is everything is stressful all the time, okay? Constantly behind the curve, you're being reactive instead of proactive. This is a loop. When things are stressful, you'll forget stuff, you'll miss more, it just repeats itself. Okay, if this is your life in any way, shape, or form, you might have an ineffective task management system. Another sign of inefficiency or a lack of effective task management is you have upset members. Okay, I've reached out to you, I've reached out to your staff, I didn't get a response. Now these members, when they don't feel connected, what happens? They're gone, okay? Or they might stick around, but they're still dissatisfied. So you have dissatisfied members. You might also have dissatisfied employees. If I had a meeting with you and I missed it because I didn't plan ahead for it or I didn't come prepared, okay? We need to be ready to lead the people that are entrusted to our care, the people that are also helping to serve our membership. So we have dissatisfied members, dissatisfied or disengaged employees. You know, sometimes you have, so when employee engagement means you're getting a discretionary effort. You have people that are going above and beyond, but then you might also have somebody on your staff that does the bare minimum, if that, okay? That's probably a disengaged employee. Sometimes people quit, but they don't leave, okay? You don't want disengaged employees. If you're inefficient, you're ineffective, you're missing things, you're not doing things properly, accurately, you'll see these things. You'll see your membership rolls dropping, you'll see your employees leaving, okay? Finally, if you're ineffective, you're just running from emergency to emergency. You can't focus on strategy. You can't focus on long-term growth or a plan. You're focused on keeping the lights on, okay? You may not know where your career is headed at all, okay? So yeah, Rachel found that link to 100soft.shop. Check it out in chat. When you're ineffective, it's really hard to have a long-term plan for yourself. Okay, so if you've recognized your situation and any of this stuff we've talked about, I want you to take maybe a hard look for the first time. Am I as effective as I can be? Do I have the right kind of system in place? Now, here's what you can stand to experience if you do have an effective system. The first thing that you hopefully will experience anyway is reduced stress. Now, of course, I'm not going to say eliminated stress. We're in business, right? We're in COVID. We're in the 20th century. We're not going to make stress go away. We've been doing more with less for a couple of decades now. That's not going to go away. So, but stress can go down. If you are seeing your levels of stress decrease, there's a good chance your task management system is effective, okay? But stress is not going to completely disappear from your life, as you know. Your stress is going to go down because you're able to quickly identify what your tasks are and what are the most important ones. You'll be working with purpose instead of putting out fires, all right? Reduce stress and greater accomplishment go hand in hand. You'll be more productive. You'll be getting more things done. You'll be attaining your goals, your organization's goals. You'll feel a sense of achievement, okay? Stress going down, accomplishment, and feelings of good go up. Other benefits of effective task management for you and your staff: client or member satisfaction. Okay, you're being responsive instead of reactive. You're staying one step ahead. You're anticipating questions. You're anticipating and managing obstacles that your board or your sponsors might be experiencing. Okay, you won't have to be reminded to do things by a board member or a sponsor or a member. You'll be timely, meeting deadlines, delivering financial statements, board packets, meeting minutes on time. You'll be on time for those appointments, okay? Your work quality will go up, okay? You'll be getting the important things done. Now, you know that one of the best ways to grow your organization is members recruiting each other. So when members are having a great experience and they're talking about their great experience to other people in community management that aren't members, you might see your membership rolls increasing at your chapter, okay? Member satisfaction. You've also got a more engaged team. Your employees will be happy. You probably have experienced this. Unhappy employees cannot make happy members. Okay, we say this at Associate. If our employees are not happy, they're not going to serve our clients well. So your team will be more engaged. They'll be going above and beyond. They'll be doing great things you never asked them to do that are making a difference, right? Other benefits, you're going to be improving your skills. You're going to be making better and quicker decisions about the types of tasks you're going to focus on and the ones that you are not going to do, tasks you're going to completely avoid. You're going to learn how to delegate better. I don't know about chapter executive directors necessarily, but I can tell you community managers are really bad at delegating because only I can do this thing. If I give it to somebody else, they're going to mess it up and I'm going to have to fix it anyway, so I'm not going to bother, right? You're going to learn things like self-discipline. You're going to learn how to say no gracefully. And we can't be Wonder Woman or Superman all the time. You're going to probably have a more prosperous career. Okay? You're going to set goals. You're going to map those out. You're going to create timelines. There's no way you're going to find time to sit down and say, where am I going in my career and how can I get there, when all you're doing is running back and forth from urgency to urgency. Finally, effective task management will help you find your why. Does anybody give me a Zoom reaction, like a hand raise or something, if you've ever read that book by Simon Sinek, Start With Why? You familiar with this book? It's not what companies do or organizations do or how they do it. It's why they do it that makes a difference. That's what's engaging to customers. Okay, so you find your own why you get out of bed every morning and log onto your computer and serve these people that seem to be ungrateful sometimes. As a community manager, that's what we do. We serve the homeowners. A lot of them are not gracious. They're not appreciative, but we do it because we love to serve people. You'll find your own why, okay? And maybe that's around membership growth. Maybe it's about your professional growth or making a difference or taking care of your loved ones. You'll be able to find these goals. So go to chat. Like I said, I'll ask you to do, go to the chat window. Let me make sure I can make it show up here for myself. There it is. Which of these benefits do you want to experience more of in 2021? Do you want reduced stress? Do you want greater accomplishment? Which of these do you want? Go to chat, let me know. Do you want to improve your skills? Do you want to find that sense of why or something else? Okay, Rachel, reduce stress. And I know some of your members, Rachel. Reduce stress. Okay, yeah, seeing that a bit. All of the above, but greater accomplishment. You want to do more quicker, right? Higher client or member satisfaction. Okay. All of these can, and I don't like to make promises, right? But I can almost guarantee you that these things will happen more if you are more effective and more efficient. Now, just a quick caveat. Some of you, again, you lead a team. You have employees that you lead. They rely on you. When I talk about, because a lot of what I do is leadership development, and I want us to make sure we understand that as leaders, efficient does not equal effective, right? The most effective way to lead a team is to lead them in the ways they need to be led, not in the ways we know how to do it or the ways that are quickest, right? It's quicker to send an email to your staff and say, here's what's going on, here's the change, move forward, right? But the most effective way is probably one-on-one conversations. You're going to need to coach certain people. Just understand when I'm talking about efficient, I don't want us to sacrifice effectiveness for efficiency. Sometimes slow down and be a little less efficient, if that makes sense. Okay, caveat over. All right, let's talk about how to figure out which of our tasks to work on first, or even which tasks are we going to ignore. If you think about your task list, if you were to write everything down that you need to do, or you might possibly need to do, or you might be responsible for, I'm willing to guarantee, I'm willing to bet that there are over 100, 150, 200, 250 tasks that could be on your task list, but you obviously cannot complete all of those in one day or 1 week or 1 month. You have to start somewhere. So how do we know where we're going to start? So here's the poll I told you about, which I'm going to launch. I want you to tell me, this is a multiple choice poll. Which of these factors do you need to consider when you're trying to figure out which tasks come first? Which task am I going to work on first? Is it because I've got a high-paying sponsor that wants it done? Is it because my board's going to be upset if I don't do it right away? Is it task dependency, right? That I can't get any of these other things done until I get this thing done first. What is it? It's urgent. There's an event occurring today and I just heard from the caterer. Okay, what is it? Which of these do we need to consider when we're trying to figure out which tasks come first? If you've got some other factors that aren't listed here, put them in chat because I'm interested. Which of these do we need to make sure we think about before determining what to work on? Only about a third of you voted. I'd love a few more votes if you don't mind. Okay, getting there. Which of these are important to think about? All right, I'll end that. I'll show these to you. It's interesting because when I ask this question of community managers, it's always the emergency question, right? And hopefully for you, you're not dealing with fire, flood, or blood like community managers are sometimes, but that one always comes up first. So it's interesting to see 3/4 of you say it's because of dependencies. I'm going to work on the tasks first that are going to unlock other tasks. And maybe so I can delegate something, I've got to get this done first, and then I can delegate the rest. Okay, that's interesting. I like that a lot. Not too concerned about whether or not your board will be upset. I think that's a little different for community managers too. They're very, not saying you're not sensitive to the board's desires, but community managers are very sensitive to client desires. For us, our boards are our clients, right? Good, okay. Now, I'm going to share those again because the key here is you have to think about all of these. They won't always apply, but you have to think about every single one of these factors when they're applicable. There's good news and there's bad news about this. The good news is, I'll give you the bad news first. The bad news is there's no one factor that determines what you work on. Okay, you can't just say, well, this one is a dependency task, I'm going to work on it first. That's not how business is anymore. And we're not factory workers, we're not fast food workers. Just because it came in first doesn't mean it gets worked on first, right? You have to balance every single one of these factors when making decisions about what to prioritize. So that's the bad news. The good/bad news is you are the decision maker, right? Lots of people have influence. If I'm a member of your chapter, if I'm a high-paying sponsor, if I'm your board member, I have a lot of influence on your choices, but that's where it stops. I don't make the choice for you. I can even say to you, hey, I'm your board president. You will do this now. You still get to choose. You might have to choose sometimes between two really bad options, but you get to choose. And because you get to choose, and the reason you get to choose is because only you are the only person on the planet that knows everything that's on your task list. You're the only person. Because you get to choose, you reap the rewards or sometimes pay the consequences of your decision making. So you are in, I guess, again, the good news, bad news is you are in complete control of your own effectiveness and your own efficiency, okay? There's no one factor that's more important than the rest. And, community managers, I don't know about you, but they have a hard time understanding that. They think, well, my board asked for it, I got to do that first. Okay, that's not the only factor, okay? You are in control, for better, for worse. That's why we're doing this, right? We're trying to give you some tools that you can use to be more effective and make better choices about what to work on. Here's a couple of methods you can use to set priorities. These are pretty common. You might have seen these before. The first one's called ABCDE. It's from the book by Brian Tracy called Eat That Frog, which I would recommend you all read. It's very quick. It's very easy. It's $8 or so on Amazon. I've read through it a couple of times. It's got 21, 24, actually more in the new edition, separate chapters. If you put into practice like 3 of the suggestions, your task management game will level up. That was for you, Rachel. Level up. So in this method, every one of your tasks has a designation of priority. And this one is letters, but it doesn't matter. It can be colors, it can be shapes, whatever it is. A tasks, absolutely must complete. Very important, very urgent, have to do it. If I don't do this or I don't do it well, significant consequences. If I do this well, significant rewards. Okay, you probably know what your A tasks are right now. Things that you absolutely must do and you must do well. B tasks are things you should complete, but they're not nearly as urgent. They're still important, but they don't have to be done right now. Okay, maybe you have a board meeting coming up in a couple of weeks and you need to reach out to a third-party vendor to get a bid for the next event, right? It's important, but it's not necessarily urgent. It'll be missed if you don't do it. Somebody's gonna notice, but it's not as urgent. C tasks, I don't know about chapter executive directors, but community managers have a ton of almost optional things on their task list that people won't notice if they get done or not. D tasks, if you give it this designation, it means something you can delegate. Delegate does not mean delete. It stays on your list until it's done, but you can delegate it, and that can be to anybody. It could be to a staff member. It could be to Crystal. Yes, I am saying you can delegate to Crystal. She has to learn how to graciously say no to your delegation, but you can delegate in any direction. Okay, sometimes you delegate to a board member. And then finally, E tasks, things you can eliminate. Nobody needs to do this. You don't need to delegate it. Nobody's ever going to notice if this is done or not, and it makes no difference. Okay, when you first write down all of your tasks, you might have some E tasks. Okay, that's one method you can use for priority setting. Next is the Eisenhower box. If you've read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you're probably familiar with this. You classify your tasks by 2 factors, urgency and importance. And importance is first. So the first tasks we work on are the things that are urgent. I'll say actually important and urgent, like your A-level tasks. Then you move to quadrant B or quadrant 2, which is still important, but not as urgent. Then there's quadrant 3, things that are urgent but unimportant. You can probably stay in email all day and not get anything else done. Email is a time trap for a lot of people. And then finally, quadrant 4, okay, things that really nobody needs to do. They are wasters, they're just distractions. Now, no matter which of these 2 methods you use, or any method really for setting priorities, make sure you're always working on the most important things first to completion. Okay, if you decide I've got 3 A tasks I've got to do today, don't sabotage yourself by saying, oh, maybe it's not that important in the afternoon. Okay, don't second guess yourself. The frog, the statement of eating that frog comes from a quote that's attributed to Mark Twain, and it's in Brian Tracy's book, as you can see here. Mark Twain once said, I'm reading the quote, that if the first thing you do each morning is to eat a live frog, you can go through the day with the satisfaction of knowing that is probably the worst thing that's going to happen to you all day long. And so I always think of uncomfortable conversations that I need to have with a board member or a supervisor or a client, right? Things that if you put off, it's going to get worse and you're going to avoid it. But it's the most important thing you need to be doing. So you need to identify what your frogs are. Okay, what are the things that are going to stand in the way of you achieving your goals, or are going to help propel you farther along the path to your goals? Okay, always tackle the most important, most urgent task first. That's your frog. Eat that frog in the morning. First thing in the morning, right? Don't wait until 10, I'm gonna check my email and then eat my frog. Eat the frog first. Now, you probably also have a number of quick and easy tasks you can knock out in like 2 minutes. If you have a couple of these, then just do it. Call that person, send that email, and then get to the really important things. Be aware of the trap, however, of spending all day on quick and easy stuff because you're avoiding your frog, right? Every minute you spend working on unimportant tasks is time you are robbing from yourself, okay? So if you have a couple of these, knock them out, cross them off, and then move on to the important, but be aware of spending too much time on these quick, easy, but unimportant tasks. All right, let's get organized for the first time. Let's take control of your life. There's a 4-step process. I'll work through it pretty quickly. The first thing is you have to write everything down. I'm not joking here. Everything. If you need to do it, you might need to do it, write it down, and write it down in one place, and write it down on a piece of paper or a notepad or in Outlook. And here's where I make the joke about people that use Post-its. I don't get it. If you want to use Post-its, that's fine. But it's all got to be captured in one spot. There's no way you're going to properly be able to do step 2 and prioritize if they're not all written in one place. You can't effectively manage your time if you have some things on a piece of paper and some things on a Post-it and some things in Outlook or Google Calendar. Okay, get it in one place. Next, prioritize it. Use whatever method you want to use, but I think you should prioritize at least daily. And sometimes it's going to be more often than that as new information comes in during the day, phone calls, emails come in. It's okay to reprioritize if you have new information, but don't second guess yourself. Okay, give it a letter, give it a color, put it in a box, work on the most important things first. Step 3 is obviously do the work. None of this is helpful to you if the work doesn't get done. Do it effectively, do it well. And then finally, you check it off. There's so many benefits to checking things off your list. Physiologically, there's a benefit. You actually have a release of dopamine or serotonin, I can't quite remember. When you check things off a list, it feels really good, right? You see progress. Maybe, and this might be as simple as you've answered the email, file or delete the email. It does not need to be in your inbox. Any of this extraneous information, old completed tasks that you still have in your peripheral vision in some way, is taking mental space that you need to be effective. Okay, 4 things: write it down, prioritize it well, do it well, and then check it off. Just pause here for a second. Yeah, I always tell the story. So I use Outlook during the week. But on the weekends, I'd use a paper list, right? I don't want to be on my work email on the weekends when I'm doing stuff around the house. So, I mean, this is my last weekend's list. I don't know, 30 things on here. So I'll add things throughout the day. I'll go cross them off when they're done. But sometimes on the weekends, I'll do something that I didn't have on my list. And so because I'm a serotonin junkie, I will write it down after completing it. I'll write it down just so that I can cross it off and get that hit, right? That's serotonin hit. So there's so much benefit to following this process, okay? But don't forget to check it off and get it out of your space. David Allen, so another book that you can check out for learning more, Getting Things Done by David Allen. He says, the mind is great for having ideas, not for storing them. You are not expected to remember all the stuff you need to get done. That's why you got to follow this process. All right, again, there's a number of reasons why you're not already doing this stuff or why you got started and then you got sidetracked. Let's talk about some of these. Now, the first one is procrastination. Procrastination is not you saying no or not doing things. Procrastination is when you know it's important and you're not doing it. Okay, if you're saying no to tasks, that's actually called task management. That's what we're talking about. If you're choosing not to work on things, that's task management. If you're choosing not to work on things that you know are important, that's procrastination. Okay, and we procrastinate because we don't want to eat the frog. The task is going to be unpleasant. It's going to be overwhelming. I'm too tired. I'm afraid to fail. We have to make sure we understand if when we procrastinate, what the consequences are if I don't get this done in time. Man, I really don't want to do this board packet right now, but they're meeting tomorrow and I haven't started it, right? You need to understand the consequences. And I'm not saying that the antidote to procrastination is willpower, right? There's only so much that the human body and brain are equipped to do every day, and there's a good chance you're hitting that limit just about every day. So make sure that, again, you're focused on the most important things and you're not eating up your mental energy all day with things that are unimportant. That's procrastination is number one. Number two is clutter. Okay, and this can be physical clutter, like you might have a desk that looks like this, but you might also have a desktop on Windows that looks like this, right? When people open up their laptop and I see it, I don't see their background. I just see icons. I'm like, I don't understand how that works. Okay, you need to clear out your space. You need to put away things that you don't need. Now, this might take some time for some of you. It's going to take some time to declutter your physical and virtual workspaces. Okay. Clear the clutter. Okay. The other potential roadblock is the task is unclear. So, as a community manager, I felt like I would take good notes at a board meeting, and then I get to the office the next day and I start to write out the minutes and I go home, wait a minute, I'm not actually sure I quite understand what it is the board wants me to accomplish here. So the answer to that is not, well, I'll get to that later necessarily, right? If it's an important task, you need to demystify it. You need to clarify. You might have to call the board president and risk sounding like you weren't paying attention by saying, I just want to be clear about what it is you want me to accomplish. Check with your board, check with your members, whoever it is. You got to demystify the task. You can't just ignore it. You can't get to the next meeting and say, oh, I didn't know what that meant or what to do, so I just thought I would wait. Okay, that's not obviously the answer. You got to demystify and clarify things that are unclear. Might be something new or unfamiliar. So if you're relatively new to being an executive director, for example, you're going to be asked to do things that you've not done before. Okay, I'm not quite sure how that works. I'm not sure who to call or what file to go to. You're going to have to learn what it is you need to learn. Learn the principles, learn the best practices, ask for help. Again, the answer can't be, I didn't know where to start, so I didn't start. That's kind of the message that you'll be sending if you decide to wait on unimportant tasks just because they're unfamiliar. And I'll say, I'm pretty sure that this community right here is very supportive. So if you're unclear about something, you call each other. You call Crystal. Crystal says, I don't know about that. Who does is Tony or somebody else. Cheryl knows this, right? Help each other out. Sometimes we wait on tasks because they're too big, they're too daunting, right? The reason why I have an elephant on here is the way you eat an elephant is what? It's one bite at a time, right? So break your huge, complicated tasks into 25 separate achievable tasks. Okay, we've got to do CA day. That's not one task. That's dozens of tasks. So create dozens of tasks, do them, prioritize them, check them off. Okay, break it down. Like community managers, you have seasons. Okay, you have holiday season. You have election season. Okay, I feel a diminished, what's a nice way to say this? A diminished sense of empathy for community managers that are struggling in October with their budgets because they didn't start them until mid-September, right? So you got to plan ahead. You've got to delegate. You cannot be caught off guard by seasons. The reason why is because we know these are coming. Okay. And again, if you're new to this, new to the ED game, reach out for some processes or some support or some guidance. Here's a big one for me, and it probably is for some of you, is just the fatigue factor. Okay. 2:30 in the afternoon is not a great time for me to try to get something important done because that's when my energy dips. Now, if you're a night owl, you might be starting to hit your stride around 4 o'clock. I'm wasted by the end of the day, 4 o'clock. But you need to take care of yourself. You need to manage your fatigue, right? For me, coffee is a big part of my fatigue management system. But so is getting up from my desk and taking a walk or going downstairs and moving the laundry or loading the dishwasher or taking a walk. Okay, you have to figure out what that is. And that includes for community managers anyway, it's really hard for them to take vacation. I mean, I don't think it is, but they think it is, so they don't do it. But you have to do it too. You have to take your vacation and take care of yourself. I always like to say you cannot take care of the people that are counting on you when you aren't taking care of yourself. You can't do it properly anyway. Sometimes it's just the reason why we're ineffective is overload. I've got too much going on. I'm in the midst of a season. This is a time for you to reprioritize as often as necessary. Okay, make sure you prioritize and focus on more than ever the most important things every day, but then reprioritize daily for sure, sometimes twice a day, hourly, whatever it takes. And when we're in periods of overload, when your board comes to you with this stack of papers, you're going to have to manage expectations. Board, here's what I'm working on. I'd love to get to that. How about if I do it next week? Is that okay? Or I'm going to have to wait on that. You have to manage expectations. That's saying no gracefully. And then finally, it's just distractions. It's the email, it's the phone calls, it's people popping in. It's, I just went to a committee meeting, but I didn't expect that this member would want to talk to me for another hour after the committee meeting was over. Okay, it's all these distractions. Whatever your distractions are, you've got to manage them. And a big way to do that is if you have not already done this, you need to shut off your new email alerts. You do not need to know when you have new email, because the answer is yes, you have new email, right? You have email. You don't need to know when a new email comes in. Don't have that little envelope or the ding or the sound or the preview. Just shut that off, okay? Sometimes you're going to need to go on do not disturb. You're going to need to close your door and manage expectations of your board, your staff, and your members during those times. One more chat at me. Which of these roadblocks do you struggle with? Put it in chat. So for me, again, is fatigue. What else? What do you struggle with? Oh, that wasn't supposed to be just a Chris. What are your roadblocks? Fatigue, yes. Seasonal overload. Tony, any particular season that really takes you out? All of them. Maybe you need to delegate, Tony. I'm just saying. I don't know. Distractions. Yeah, it's sometimes task size. And Emily, you're working on things that aren't just chapter related; they're regional related, right? Yeah, in the fall. So we've got, the annual meeting. We've got board meetings still. We got committee meetings. We got holiday planning. You've got to go out and see the facility that the holiday gala committee wants to use. Okay. What else? Any other? So it doesn't look like we have a lot of procrastinators, which is great. But we will all procrastinate from time to time. And I'm not saying it's okay, but I'm saying I get it. Okay. Well, that was the quick download on task and time management. So Crystal might mention this. I'll say it. I'm happy to come talk to your chapter virtually, or maybe not in person just yet, depending, but I've given this presentation for a couple of chapters. And if you want to bring me to talk about this, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But here's what we covered: why inefficiency and efficiency are important, how to prioritize properly, how to get organized, and really knock down your roadblocks. Okay? This is what we want. We want you to experience those benefits, manage those roadblocks, and we want you to be successful. Be an achiever, be somebody that your board, and a lot of you are, could not live without. Okay? That's it, Crystal.
Awesome. That was great, Greg. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've listened to you a couple of different times, and every time I pick up something. Let's take your slides down, if you will, Greg, so we can see the group and have a little conversation here. Hopefully we can get some more people to come on camera so we can see your beautiful faces. I'm interested to hear from the CEDs at some of these practices or ideas that you'd like to put in place after you've listened today. This is the group participation time, just to be clear.
You were warned ahead of time that this was coming.
Exactly.
I think delegating, especially to volunteers, not necessarily to other staff, that's something that I struggle with because I don't necessarily trust the volunteers going to do what we think they should do.
Yeah, they have a
Definitely.
totally different vision sometimes, right?
Okay. I am guilty of Post-its. I've joked with Greg about this. It's not my primary mechanism, but I probably use them a little too much.
Well, I mean, I have to pick on somebody, right?
I
And so
know, and I
pick
totally, I'm
Post-it
good
users.
with that.
And just to
Good with
be clear, you know, I have Post-its on my desk, and I'll be like, oh, I need to make sure that I'll grab a Post-it, write it down, but then it gets transferred to the main list, right?
Yep.
I think you need a better capture system than Post-its, but they're good intermediaries. Also for me, you know, because I carry my phone with me throughout the house, and when I go downstairs and make coffee, remember, oh, I need to make sure I do this. I use my phone. I put it on my phone, and because it's connected to my Outlook, then it goes on my task list directly from Siri.
Does anybody email themselves? All the time here. Like anytime I think of something, I'm like, oh, let me send myself an email so I remember in the morning, or whatever.
Right, and convert your emails into tasks. If you're using Outlook, right-click, flag it for later, and it will migrate itself to your task list. You don't have to drag it over, but you can do that too from your inbox to tasks.
So what kind of systems is everybody using? Like Greg talked a little bit about Outlook. Do you guys use Outlook for your task management? Do you use some kind of, I know we talked a little bit previously about project management software. Do you use checklists? Like share what you guys are using to hopefully help other people that may not have a great system or want to try something else. Okay, Denise just put in the chat, she has a dry erase board that she puts on every day and every week and every month, so she knows what's coming. It's great. Spreadsheet checklist. I'm with you, Chris. I use an old-fashioned notebook and hand write it down.
Well, and I'll say I prefer electronic because it goes everywhere with me, but there is nothing quite like the tactile feel of crossing something off.
Yep.
I mean, I'm getting excited just thinking about it, right?
Greg, we got to get you out more.
Yes, and right. No, I mean, so in Outlook, you click the little checkbox and it disappears, and that's good.
It's
but
good. It's not quite as
off,
satisfying. I agree.
It's not.
I agree.
It's not.
Something that I found was helpful was because we do a lot of events, and so I made these little like sheets. I'm going to disappear. So it says pre-event, for during the event, and after the event, and I just put the name of the event at the top.
And then you can check off or cross off. Nice.
So then do you have, so Rachel, do you have a list somewhere that says work the list for X event? Like, are you still?
No, I keep it on like my paper. God, I need to take this 1 second.
So you physically attach it to your list?
It's not a Post-it, but yeah, but I just like will put it at the bottom and then I'll check it off. Like here's CNC July coffee break stuff that I'm doing for it. And I'll print it off.
Great.
It's helped a lot.
Okay. What kind of, is anybody using any kind of software outside of Outlook that they love?
Yeah, Gabrielle says Teams.
Yeah, I know I've heard a lot of people have started, we use Teams at CAI headquarters. We don't use it for kind of task management as much as,
it's good for meetings.
Yeah, so, but I'm interested. I know a lot of people have started using it more to learn more about that.
Tony, is Microsoft Planner part of Office 365?
Yeah, it is.
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's not called Planner anymore. They recently renamed it. I honestly don't know what they call it now, but it's not the best project management, but it works for what we use it for.
And it's included in the price of Microsoft 365.
Yeah, it's one of their free apps if you're a subscriber, yes.
Cool. Okay.
I mean, it's still coming up as Microsoft Planner.
I think they tried to make it part of Teams somehow. Maybe it's called Team Planner now. I don't know. To be honest with you, I'm confused a lot by how Microsoft works. But it still comes up as Planner on my side too, Greg.
Okay.
They also have in 365 To Do, which I've never opened before.
I think that's what they intended to rename Planner, but for some reason it still comes up as Planner for me. And
Okay. I mean, it's probably a redirect, right?
Yeah. Okay. Any other tools or tips from anybody in the group that you'd like to share? Or let's flip it around. Anything else you struggle with that you didn't get an answer to today?
I really like the eat the frog, tactic. In fact, I've read that book before, and I had kind of gotten away from it, but it's so true. When you tackle those hard things first thing in the morning, your day just seems to be easier.
Well, have you ever sat on an important task all day until like 4:45?
Yes.
And your whole day, your mind is preoccupied the whole day?
Yep. You keep thinking,
Yeah,
I got
that
to do
book around
that.
here somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, I find that when I do that, I like build it up in my head that this is going to be like an incredibly difficult, horrible process, and then when I do it, I'm like, oh, that wasn't that horrible. I should have just done it sooner.
Well, okay, but even if it is horrible,
because there are those things. True.
Even if it is horrible, go do it, deal with the fallout, and move on quicker. Right. So I, had to go to my boss sometimes and say, hey, I made a mistake and it's going to cost us $3,000 to make it right. Okay. It's not a conversation you want to have, but I'd rather get it over with, I guess. Okay. I mean, I say that now, but when I'm sitting in the moment, it's like, no, I'm going to, I think today's a good day to go on inspections. No, but like, even if it is going to be bad, it's better to do it and start dealing with it.
I think that
because I also don't want my boss to find out I screwed up because a client called her.
Mm-hmm.
Right? As they say in PR, control the message.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think that also helps in reducing stress. I know that was one of the top things that people mentioned is if you get that big ugly thing out of the way, then you're like, okay, like you said, Greg, if that's the worst thing that happens, today's going to be a good day.
Well, and the longer you hold on to it, probably, like you were saying, Crystal, the more it's going to build itself up in your mind.
Weigh on you. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. All right. Any other comments from the audience here?
I will say too, we talked about setting up a system. If you don't have one, obviously set one up, but don't stick with a bad system. If you put something in place and it's not working for you, then tweak it. Pick a different method. I basically started with the ABCDE method, but it doesn't look like that anymore. You wouldn't look at it now and go, oh, that's the ABCDE method from Eat That Frog, right? It's gone through several iterations over time, and I've kind of landed on what works for me. But, in a year from now, it's going to look a little bit different. So constantly just make sure that your list works for you, not somebody else.
One other thing that I've been doing for most of my career that seems a little strange as far as task management, but for me it works, is time tracking. Like when I make my list of what I'm planning to do that day, I record how much time it takes me to do that, because then I'm like, if I look back and I'm like, why did it take me 2 hours to type an email to go to the chapter? That would be a ridiculous amount of time. I clearly wasn't focused. So it kind of helps kind of position where I need to be. If that makes sense. Kind
of right size those things, right? And maybe you realize, hey, this 2 hours would probably be better spent by somebody else on my staff.
Yep, that too. That absolutely. There are days that I look at that and I'm like, why did I spend my time on that? I should have delegated that.
Rachel's thinking, how do I pick up some of those staff members he keeps talking about?
You
Right.
can delegate to volunteers too. They can act as staff sometimes.
I guess that's one of my questions then. So how, I don't know if this relates to task management, but how do you delegate to a volunteer when it's something that like the board has thought up, or like an idea? Do you have the board then go to the volunteers and say, hey, we had this idea?
I think in that case, it's important to understand what the real outcomes are. So if the board says, hey, Rachel, we need you to email Greg, right? That's different. But if they say, we need this done, unless they say, we absolutely want you to do it, which I doubt happens, what they want to know is that it got done well. Now, so if you can't, as Tony was saying, can't exactly trust your committee to do it well, let's figure out how we can, right? Do they need more information? Do they need training? Do they need empowerment? Or do they need a sense of safety? How can we get them to the spot? I mean, Rachel, do you have a committee that you would trust to do just about anything?
Yes. Yeah.
Dot. So, but what is it then? You don't have to answer this now, but what is it about that committee that makes them that way, right? It's not just because it has Wendy Benner on it, right? It's because Wendy Benner displays certain characteristics that are trustworthy, reliable, et cetera. So how do we get other committees there? In other words, how do we develop our volunteers?
Yeah, it goes back to
would
that
be another way to
question.
say that.
Okay. Yeah. So it's basically about noting and giving them as much information as possible so that way they could do the task, and making sure that on the board side of things that this is how it was handled, and if it doesn't get done.
But it's just like delegating to another employee too, right? I can't delegate to somebody that's in my reporting chain by saying, here, sink or swim, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You wouldn't do that either.
No.
And I think it's important too when you're, when the board or committee says, hey, we have this great idea and we want to do that, that you as a CED or a staff member has the ability to say, that's a fabulous idea and we should definitely do that. Here's what's going on. And maybe even it's not in the full board meeting. Maybe it's just with your president or committee chair. Here's everything else that's going on. Where do you want this to fit in? Or is there something that we can take away for now, push aside so that we can do this really cool thing? Because we executive directors and managers have a tendency to think, just like Greg's first picture, I'm fine, I can do it all, and we do, and we pile all of this on, and it really, over time, we've all experienced a time in our life where it's just gotten to be too much, and then there's no easy way out once you've got all of this on top of you. So I think that's important.
I would say too, giving them parameters, maybe making sure the budget's clear, giving them parameters. And if you really want them to do something, letting them run with it. And I know as a former CED, that's hard, because we have a certain way we might want it to look, and it may look different, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, So I think sometimes we have to give them the freedom to committees and not micromanage them as well. Give them their parameters and let them go. If we can trust them, we may have to rein them in, but I know how hard that is. I'm not saying that I did that well, but I think that, that could be effective.
Volunteer management is a thing, right? You can't just, they're going to need constant development, constant information.
Yeah, but that starts with giving them the proper tools in the beginning, like I know some of you, and I hope many of you do like a committee chair orientation or something at the beginning of the year where they get policies and budgets and, how do you work with the staff and who do you work with and that sort of thing. That kind of sets the expectation early. What are they allowed to do? What are they not allowed to do? In the parameters of their committees.
Well, that sets up a situation too, because I love to let other people get the kudos or have the spotlight. So if your board says, hey, Rachel, this went off really well, then you can say, yeah, because the committee killed it, right? So it's an opportunity to pass those kudos through to somebody else.
Which in turn gets them fired up, which makes them stay.
Now we have volunteer engagement and they're going above and beyond, and it self-perpetuates.
And they're going to help you again and do an amazing job because they want the kudos again. So
They'll
it's
reach
just-
out and say,
yeah.
hey, what else can I do? Maybe that's fantastic. I don't know.
life goals right there.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, we are at 2:57 Eastern time. So we're coming up on the end of our session. So just we've had a lot of quiet people here today. So anybody wanna any last minute sharers?
Thank you, Greg. This was great. I truly felt like you were talking to me when you were discussing about the desktop. I felt that. I always am looking at my desktop and I'm like, I swear I cleaned this thing off and it just happens to get more stuff on it. So thank you for the tips.
Yeah, that's my dining room table. We come in and dump.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, that stuff does suck up. You may not realize it does suck up mental energy.
It does.
It does.
Thanks for that.
Okay.
It's been great. It's been great seeing you all. Hope to see you again soon.
Yes, thank you, Greg. Thank you so much for your insight. We very, very much appreciate it. And CDs, we will see each other very soon. Thank you very much and have a great afternoon.
If you have any questions, please contact a member of the Chapter Relations team or email chapterlearning@caionline.org.